Yeah, I'm Thom Lamb, and I've been the pastor here at Grace Presbyterian Church in Temple, Texas, since January of 2012. And Grace Presbyterian Church is a pretty established congregation. It's about 125 years old in December. And it has been an incredible journey. Grace has grown from about 90 people in attendance when I arrived to about 160 to 170 in attendance on a weekly basis. Part and partial, I think it's two-tiered. There's a commitment to children and youth in this congregation, as well as a strong commitment to mission. Not just mission giving, but hands-on mission. I think that's quickly developing a stronger missional identity. Well, it hasn't been huge growth. It's been incremental and steady, averaging about 7 to 8 a year until last year, when we had a little over 25 members come into the congregation, and it's increased even more this year. I think a big part of it has been a rounding of staff and program, as well as a deeper spiritual sense of journey, and that in this congregation it doesn't matter where you are on your journey, you're welcomed. And so we have people who are incredibly conservative, people who are incredibly liberal, and just about everything in between. But what I've discovered is that every voice is somehow respected. One Bible study alone, we have people on opposite ends of the table, and they get into it. And then they go and sit down together at brunch and break bread together. And to me, that's what the body of Christ is about, not one-mindedness or being homogeneous, but in our diversity, we learn from each other. And I think that's how Christ wants us to be, in a good way. Well, a lot of the encouragement comes theologically, I think. Part and parcel, I think, from the pulpit and in the classroom, there is a sense of a deeper journey. It's not just about reading the Bible and trying to understand it, but more so, how does this apply to me here and now? And so we cherish the story in a lot of ways. Not just the story of Jesus, but how that story is continued in the lives of those who follow him. So I think that's been a big part of it. And it hasn't been a church growth seminar, it hasn't been, but the practice and discipline of hospitality and grace across the board, which I think it's an inherent part of this congregation, and it has become a part of this congregation, which makes welcoming and changing possible, rather than that sort of, we always want it to be the way it was, or it can't work here, or we don't have the money for it. Ironically, God's led us in places where we didn't have the money for something and it was there. And so grace abounds, I think, when we focus our energy on being faithful. Yeah, I think it's very clear in the Presbyterian Church that ordination has no hierarchy. My task as a minister of Word and Sacrament is different from the task of an elder or a deacon, but the bottom line is we're all leveled before God. Our task is different. Our call is the same, to follow Jesus Christ and to be faithful. And so when we ordain an elder, we put them through a training and make it very clear before they're called what the expectations are. We expect that they will be leaders in the congregation. We expect that they will be involved in the life of the congregation. We expect that they will take those roles. And as a pastor, I don't believe in micromanaging. So if you're an elder in charge of Christian education, then I expect that you're going to take the lead there, and I'm here to resource you and to facilitate anything that you need. But the bottom line is, that's your call in the life of this church. And so we take that very seriously, and we look at it as a matter of call, all the way from the root of the process, where instead of recruiting a warm body to sit in a seat, we try to call people to ministry. Session has 7 committees in this church. So when a vacancy comes forward, we don't look just to fill it with a person. We look to fill someone with skills for worship. We look to fill it with someone for skills for finance and stewardship. So what we're looking is to call people to specific roles on the session as an elder. And there is a high expectation. It's not always met, but you do your best. And I think we have a marvelous session, and we do a lot of work by consensus to make that work. Sure. There's 2 Presbyterian churches in Temple, First Presbyterian Church and Grace Presbyterian Church. It became clear in conversations with the pastor at First Pres that they were in a position where they were no longer viable as a congregation. Their session approached us in March, early March of this year, and wondered if we were willing to open our doors to a possibility for assimilating the members of First Presbyterian Church, some of their mission and ministry, into the life of Grace Presbyterian Church, in that they anticipated closing their doors. That became an even more stark reality. A small group was formed, 3 elders from Grace, 3 elders from First, and the 2 pastors, and the directors of music, the worship people from each church. So the 9 of us, got together and began to develop a plan for assimilation. We spent a lot of time talking about common ground, spent a lot of time talking about our faith journey. So the first couple of meetings were just an opportunity for us to share what's important to us about our churches and why they're important. The faith in the midst of all of this has been miraculous. There's an incredible amount of grief involved in a church that's closing its doors. Grief on a variety of different levels. And so it's a very difficult process. As the church that will be receiving them, we have basically opened our doors and are allowing them to take the lead in how we move forward. Meetings progressed over the course of the late spring and into the early summer, and we developed a comprehensive plan for assimilation. First Pres will be closing their doors at the end of August, and we plan to assimilate those who choose to unite with us during the month of September. In the meantime, we've already adopted several of their mission concerns, which were already part of our mission concerns. However, it's caused us a little kick in the pants to take on a more aggressive role missionally. I think we grew quite content with where we were. And so as First came on, we found out that we both had Meals on Wheels programs. We were feeding 20 people a week. They were feeding 20 people a week. So now at Grace, we're feeding 40 people a week, and that starts next week to begin that process. They were a family promise church. We were a family promise church. They were a host church. We were a partner church. So our session just recently voted that we would become a host church. which changes our responsibility in that ministry and broadens the scope of that ministry for Grace. In addition, one of the concerns we did not have was a program called Living Waters for the World. Living Waters for the World installs water systems in third world countries, providing clean water, also providing medical care, also providing education. So this three-tiered program has been a beautiful testimony to First Presbyterian Church. Our session has now adopted Living Waters as a mission of Grace Presbyterian Church, and we hope to install a water system next spring in a third world country somewhere. We had been working in Nicaragua, but because of the unrest in Nicaragua, we won't be able to return there. So we're looking at another venue for 2019 to install a water system to bring medical care to a community. So it's a pretty exciting challenge for us. It's opened the door for us to really be challenged in the ministries we're involved in and to look at what we're capable of and expanding and not sitting on our laurels, being too proud of ourselves. And we're also taking on a number of their sacred objects, baptismal font, a stained glass cross that hangs in their sanctuary, a cross wall that they have held sacred, a number of other appointments. The First Communion Cent. First Presbyterian Church Temple was the first church, period, in Temple. So we are assimilating a lot of history, including the fact that 125 years ago we broke from them. So in some ways, instead of a 125th anniversary, it's a 125th reunion in a lot of ways. I think anytime that you introduce new people, there is a sort of undercurrent of fear that goes with that. And I think part of that fear is the unknown. And one of the great consolations to that fear is faith. And I think as people began to look closer and closer at what we were doing, one of our elders remarked, if we weren't doing this, we would be Christians in name only. And I think that has been a great insight for the congregation. Also, I think the biggest challenge for us is going to be handling the volume. The level of pastoral care is going to change. We are definitely going to be welcoming most of their homebound members and the people who are on the periphery. And so that's a challenge to the pastoral staff and to the board of deacons and to other caring ministries in the life of the church. But I think programmatically, I think it's been a wonderful sort of refreshing kind of time, because they brought some wonderful fellowship programs, including a thing called Faith on Tap, which they gather at a local pub, have a pint, and talk about the theology of the day. Somebody brings a topic, and yeah, it just sounded great to me. So we plan to inherit that fellowship program for sure. But also integrating leadership. They have some incredible leadership at First Pres. And among the people who will be coming to Grace are elders who are willing to serve. We have 2 current openings on our session, and we will be welcoming 2 elders from First to fill those positions, as well as a position on the board of deacons. So it's our hope that this assimilation will breed some familiarity for the people who are coming over, that leadership, they're represented by leadership at their new congregation, so to speak. But there are a lot of logistical challenges, and so a big part of that is going to be remaining quiet listening for the voice of the Spirit, and allowing Christ to be at the center of this process, as opposed to us pushing an agenda one way or the other, but to be very intentionally spiritual about the process. The best advice is look at your community, because you can read every church growth book, every manual, everything that somebody puts out, and the truth is, if you don't have the demographic to do it, it'll never work. If you don't have the energy of the people who are inspired, it'll never work. So you look within first. Who are you? Really identify who you are. The best way to do that is mission study, where you get the input of everybody in the congregation, and then the congregation determines the direction of the congregation. It's not the pastor setting an agenda. It's not somebody else putting it together, but rather the congregation as a whole agrees to move in a very specific way, establishing what are the things that are most important to us, and then looking at the community that surrounds the church. What's the need in that community? How do you address that need? What are people longing for where you live? It's different everywhere. You know, to try to find a self-help book that'll make church growth work for you probably won't work. But looking within and then looking outward, in that process, you'll begin to determine valid mission, valid ministries that can breed a certain sense of excitement within the congregation, but also within the community. I was serving a church in State College, Pennsylvania, many moons ago, and one of the joys was sitting in a supermarket and listening to some people talk. And we had a rather large youth group in State College, about 175 kids. And I had a team of 24 leaders working in this ministry. And I'm standing in line at the grocery store, and they said, "Oh, my child goes to State College Presbyterian Church." And the other person said, "Oh, that's where I hear they really love the youth." When that's the word in the community, it changes what you have to offer. It changes who you are as the body of Christ, as a witness wherever you are. So I think look within and then look outward, and then make those two things match.
Holy Spirit, fill the hearts of all people with your fire. Kindle all people with your fire.